Hello and welcome to episode 84 of PvA Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellocline. Cody, how's it going, my friend?
I'm feeling good. Had a nice holiday break. I'm ready to get back to podcasting.
Awesome. Yeah, we did take last week off for the holidays. Hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Also joining us today, Larry, lost in the cranberry sauce hunt. Larry, how are you doing?
Lost in the sauce, baby. The cranberry sauce.
So, how long did your can of cranberry sauce last?
Why would it last more than the day of? Huh? And then the next day you open the next can.
Did you really have multiple cans of cranberry sauce, you disgusting animal?
Yes. I put my disgusting sandwich in the Discord, and I was really
did see your
disappointed by
sandwich.
your lack of comment.
I did see your sandwich. I'm sorry. No, it actually looked good, man. Like, I'm not going to shit on you for eating a leftover sandwich, even if it has, the inferior kind of cranberry sauce on it.
Yeah. You should have seen the day after that. I had, you had bread, cheese, ham, stuffing, turkey, cheese, but cranberry sauce on each slice of bread. And oh man, it was delicious.
I'm looking at it now, and I can't tell if it's the lighting or the sandwich itself, but this looks absolutely grotesque.
Can you send that photo in our group text here? Because I can't change screens without fucking up all of our overlays, and I'd love to be able to see this.
I can't do that because I'm using my cell phone as my webcam right now.
Cody's got us because I'm interested in because I did see it, but I'm trying to remember what it looked like.
The picture's horrible, but even if the picture were good, it looks awful.
It does.
It looks disgusting, but I'm telling you, delicious.
So I cooked a T-bone steak. I don't know if I told this on the podcast last week, but we've been ordering our groceries through Instacart, which has been just a wild experience, guys. Like, the people who shop for Instacart give zero fucks about what you actually put into that app, and they just pick up whatever they want. But they had New York strip on special, which is like my favorite cut of steak, right? So I ordered 2 steaks. Well, they didn't have it, so they messaged us, hey, do you want us to switch this out for T-bone instead? And I told Lauren, I was like, no, just tell them to cancel and refund us because I'd like to go find some New York strip because it's our favorite cut. It's Thanksgiving, yada, yada. Well, our groceries get to the house. We had not 1 pack of T-bone steaks. We had 2 packs of T-bone steaks, 6 pounds of T-bone steak delivered right to our doorstep that we did have to pay for, but did not order. But I grilled those up, and well, we froze 1 pack. We grilled the other pack up, and then, it was very, very delicious, tasty. But the next day we made some steak tacos with it. That's how we reimagined our leftovers. Did you eat your leftovers in any kind of creative way there, Cody?
I did the sandwich too. I don't tend to put cheese on it, but I did the turkey stuffing taters sandwich. I do not partake in cranberry sauce, as we discussed before, but I still felt like it was a good sandwich. We got these good rolls too from this local farm, so that's always good.
That sounds delicious. Now, Larry, have you ever taken it to the next level and just put it in a panini press?
Oh
No.
But that sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
That sounds amazing.
Or just like, cook it like a grilled cheese in a pan if you don't have a panini press, but, reheat that bad boy.
Best.
I saw something from a friend that I thought was really horrible, and that was incorporating the stuffing into pancakes the next day.
Oh no.
What?
You heard me.
Did they seriously, was that like a serious thing?
Yeah, and they were very happy about it, and I'm gonna let them do their thing. That's something I won't be trying.
That sounds very thick and chunky, and not like, ugh.
Yeah, that sounds gross.
Oh, I meant waffles.
Either way,
still
doesn't matter.
still
Not worth it.
To make like a savory waffle, is that the point?
I don't know.
Wait, hold on. I really got to understand this. We're at it's a light news week, guys. Just stick with us. Did they just put the stuffing in a waffle maker, or did they mix it into waffle batter?
I'm not really sure. All I saw was the final product.
Okay, because taking just a heaping spoonful of leftover stuffing, putting it in a waffle iron and crisping it up, that sounds awesome. But if their goal was like make a waffle batter, mix the stuffing in it, and then make some sort of weird breakfast Thanksgiving dinner hybrid, that person should be arrested.
No arguments here.
And if we didn't have such a corrupted Justice Department, they probably would already be in jail. This is PvA Radio. We get together every single week over here on twitch.tv/itishoagie at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesdays. And then if you can't catch us live, youtube.com/PvA Radio on podcast services everywhere. If you're hanging out and chat with us, feel free to, or hanging out on Twitch with us, feel free to chat along with us. I'm ready to jump into some gaming news. How about you guys?
If you find some, sure.
Light week. We're in that weird phase between Thanksgiving and Christmas where it's all just like sales driven shit, right? Like it's not a lot. Obviously, we'll have Cyberpunk next week, right? Or Friday.
Next week.
Next week. And so that'll be big news. I plan on playing it, and I know you do, Cody. So
hell yeah.
But yeah, light news week. So we kind of scoured the internet, and I found this article from Patrick Klepek over at Vice, which is weird to see it just say Vice because it's not. What did it used to be called? It
was
Waypoint, and now it's just been folded back into Vice. But Patrick Klepek did this story. Now I want to be really clear here. This story is on leaked materials. Like the source of this is leaked materials from a studio. I work for a publisher who, but I'll say this like at the top. I don't know if we ever saw the deck that's being referenced here. I personally have never seen the deck that's being referenced here. So I figured this would be an interesting thing to talk about, just like the high level points of it. But just understand that like the information that we're going to talk about is directly from this story and not from anything that I've personally seen. It's like a part of my job. Capiche? Understood? All right.
Capiche.
But yeah, this is from Patrick Klepek over at Vice. And this is talking about kind of single player, the role of like single player games in the PlayStation ecosystem and kind of games in general, and how activities have become a cornerstone for PS5. Now, Cody is our resident next gen official. We just lost Larry's video.
Sorry, just roll with it.
All right, I'm just rolling with it. But he is our next gen correspondent, so I'm going to send it over to Cody to explain to us what is the activities feature on the PlayStation 5 before we jump into the meat of this story.
Sure. So activities are kind of the card-like UI system that PlayStation sort of advertised ahead of launch. Basically, if you're playing a game or want to hop into a game, you can kind of bring up the activities for that game, and it basically logs progress on specific tracks. So first, for a game like Miles Morales, that might mean there's an activity for the next main story, or an activity for. Oh, did I get lost there for a second?
Yeah, you stuttered for just a moment.
Sorry. Yeah. So basically, there are activities in Miles Morales. There's an activity for the next main story quest you want to go into, the next side quest, or like the collectibles. So you can click on an activity, and it'll basically fast track you and load you right into that section of the game. And how that'll be implemented in other games, I'm not sure. I know the article specifically calls out Demon Souls for this. I haven't done this yet in Demon Souls, but with Demon Souls, the activities are basically just the areas that you can go into, the zones or lands that you can load into, and so you can quick hop between those. It's basically a faster fast travel system to allow you to more easily access the content you want to access right away.
So is this like kind of automatically generated based off of where you're at in the game, or can you like manually set bookmarks of where you want to go back to?
It is generated by the game itself, so it's really up to the developer to kind of implement this how they want to. It seems like it tracks your progress pretty seamlessly, and it's basically just like you're in a game, you hit the PlayStation button, and it'll basically bring all that stuff up. Instead of in this case, it's interesting for the PS5, hitting the PlayStation button doesn't bring you to the home screen automatically. it brings up this kind of feed and a bunch of other UI features. So yeah, it's more kind of based on where you are as opposed to you setting those landmarks yourself.
Okay. And this is just kind of a framework for the underlying discussion that I think we're going to have, but I think it's important to understand kind of like this is the information that PlayStation was inputting when making the decision to make activities a feature. So
there's also there's another thing that's worth mentioning about activities. I haven't toyed around with this at all, but I know that another aspect of it is you can watch guides for specific activities. Like they actually have video guides. Basically, instead of you going to IGN or something, they've made it easily accessible from the actual PlayStation itself. And I know that'll actually probably play into our discussion as well, but I figured I'd just bring that up, that it has that functionality as well.
Interesting. Are those made by the developers?
I believe so. Or they're taken from, I don't think they're taken from user generated content, so they must be from the developer.
That's interesting. So Vice got a hold of this this deck that was being sent around to various gaming companies, kind of explaining some of their own data findings from their own user base and some of their own findings from conversations with players, some like user research that led them to making this a feature of their next gen console, and kind of as a proof of concept for like, here's why you as a studio should leverage this if you're making these sorts of games. But what was interesting about this deck is the positioning of single player games against multiplayer games, and kind of going against what we would maybe consider kind of conventional wisdom within the game space, right? Like you ask a lot of people who are like mildly familiar with games, like what's more popular, multiplayer games or single player games, and most people will say like, oh no, it's got to be multiplayer games, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, like Grand Theft Auto Online, all that stuff. Well, in this presentation, there's a slide that said everyone knows single player is dying, and then it showed the top selling PlayStation 4 games, which are Grand Theft Auto, Black Ops 3, really multiplayer focused games. But the next slide, they said something interesting, that with their internal tracking, it shows that single player is thriving, and that PlayStation users are regularly spending more time playing offline than they are online. And so they aren't actually able to show the charts in here because they're watermarked and could possibly reveal the source of this information. But so essentially what Sony is saying is like, from their own data, like, look, your consoles are just like machines that are constantly reporting information back to Sony, right? So that they can make decisions in the future. And so it's tracking and saying like, we see players spending more time playing offline than they are online. And so they wanted to start to track like, hey, for single player games, what is the hang up for some people who like may want to be interested in some of the single player titles, but aren't. And here were some of those top responses according to the article. First, quote, no idea how long I might need. Don't play unless I have 2+ free hours to play. The second reason is it takes a lot of time to scan through long help videos when I'm stuck. So that kind of speaks to what you were talking about, Cody. The third is, how do I engage socially with this thing without the risk of spoilers? And then the fourth is forgot what I was doing in this game last time, and now it's hard for me to get back into it. Guys, this is #relatable.
Yes.
As I was reading like this section of this article and these findings in this user research, I just I imagine they just had a picture of me right next to it. You know? Because
we've been monitoring this man's PlayStation for years.
And he just seems to play Overwatch, despite the fact that he plays Overwatch on everything else that he owns as well. So I want to kind of step back from this and just give you guys a chance to respond to some of the stuff we've already talked about in this article. And then after that, we can move on to other things that you found interesting. But conventional wisdom wise, like if I were to ask you before reading this article, what's more popular among gamers, single player or multiplayer, like what would you have said? And were you surprised by what was shown in this article?
I would have definitely said multiplayer. So yeah, it's surprising. I do have a question, and it may be that I just didn't catch it. how did they define popularity?
I think it's a
Is it
time-based thing because they said that
okay?
players regularly spend more time playing
Yeah.
offline than they do online.
So that is shocking to me, because think of the resources that have been sunk into bringing people back to these multiplayer games again and again and again and again and again. And games, everybody seems to be sprinting toward games as services as the only way to continue to make your game profitable if you're going to continue selling at a $60 price point. So yeah, this goes against all of my assumptions.
I was surprised. I generally my general perception, is that multiplayer is people would sink more hours into that stuff. I'm not surprised for Sony though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where their data sort of skews obviously to what their strengths are as a publisher. Like they have, contrary to kind of, I agree largely with what Larry is saying, kind of the move to games as service has been a trend industry wide, but Sony has largely just reinvested into like prestige single player titles. And so it doesn't surprise me that like if you own a PlayStation, maybe you don't go online at all and just play The Last of Us Part 2, Spider-Man, and God of War. Those don't require an online connection as far as I'm aware. And like I think a lot of people, I specifically, and I can relate to this on some level, and my friends anecdotally I'm aware of this as well. Like my PlayStation 5 and my PlayStation 4 were basically Sony game machines.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play third-party games on them. I played third-party games on Xbox because I liked the controller better and I liked the store interface better. So I'm not too surprised, at least in terms of Sony's data revealing this trend.
That was kind of my first thought when I saw this. Well, my first thought was like, oh, wow, that's surprising. And then I started thinking about like how I use my PlayStation 5 versus how I use my Xbox One. I mean, I'm sorry, my PlayStation 4 versus how I use my Xbox One.
Getting ahead of yourself.
I know. I keep coming up just short every time I get in the queue for it. But my PlayStation 4 was very much like a single player machine. Like I played most of my single player titles on my PlayStation, and all my friends were playing on Xbox. Now, I don't think like that's everybody in the world.
Sure.
And I also have to think about some of the games and franchises that PlayStation like heavily invested in. But then I think about kind of the timeline of those investments, right? So like the beginning of the PlayStation 4 generation, they were investing really heavily in like exclusive content from like GTA and from Call of Duty, and then. Yeah. I think they like let the deal with Activision lapse, if I'm not mistaken, and we're like, we just don't like. They had the option to renew it, but didn't go after it. And I have to imagine that it was because like this wasn't moving the needle for them. Like the Call of Duty players weren't playing on PlayStation, despite the fact that like I think Call of Duty League last year was still all played on PlayStation machines and stuff like that. Like I think that partnership kind of. The exclusivity in that partnership kind of evolved over time, but it was less focused on like, here's exclusive material for our at-home players. And I have to think that was driven by some of this internal data that's being. But you're absolutely right, Cody. Like, what is Sony's exclusive online multiplayer game that everyone's playing? There isn't one.
Kill Switch.
What's that?
Yeah, Kill Switch.
Killzone. Killzone.
Oh, Killzone. My bad. Yeah.
So close.
The Last of Us multiplayer.
Oh my! It was so fun. It was so good.
It was great.
But yeah. So while surprising at first, I can see like I imagine if we looked at Xbox's internal data, it would tell an entirely different story.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
The other thing I wanted to talk about though were these reasons. And Larry, I know you're not a big single player guy. It takes like kind of a special. Go ahead.
I'm not because of these reasons.
Yeah, definitely. So, which ones of these did you kind of relate to the most, if any of them stuck out, or were you kind of like, oh, that's me for all of those?
Trying to find the list again. I'm sorry.
None of these are issues for me.
Not knowing how much. Go ahead. Sorry.
I will say, I guess the first one maybe the most. No idea how long I might need. Don't play unless I have 2 + 3 hours. I prefer to play with like a solid chunk of time. If it's like a Last of Us, that's how I prefer to play. But and Luke and I were talking about Assassin's Creed Valhalla before this. Like that's the kind of game where I feel like I could just like, if I have like 30 or 45 minutes worth of time, then I'll just play that game for that short chunk of time.
Mhm.
But I am not the demo that they're trying to persuade on this stuff. I'm already sold on single player.
And that's the thing, like, I'm sold on single player. Like, that's not the thing. Single player games are kind of like movies for me. Like, I'm not a guy who's gonna sit down and like ask my wife, like, hey, you want to watch a movie today? Like, because I'm not geared towards like committing myself to a couple hours of anything. And so like, but when Lauren asked me to watch a movie with her and I sit down and watch it, I'm generally always going to end up like enjoying my time with that movie. It may not have been the thing that I picked. And I'm the same way with single player games. Like, when I force myself to like sit down and play a single player game because I'm like, man, I just need a change of pace, I always end up enjoying that experience. Like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I bought it because I just wanted something different. I've already dumped like 30 hours into it. So like, they can get their hooks in me, but I relate so much to these to all of these reasons. But go ahead, Larry. I think I cut you.
You're good. For me, it's the first one and the last one. The middle two don't really like looking for help videos. I don't typically do that. I'll beat my head into the wall for months if I have to figure it out. The engaging socially, like, it's not the risk of spoilers that I worry about there, but oftentimes I just don't know where to find a group of people to just talk about the game with. It's harder to do that than when you watch a show, I think. But the other two really are where I'm at. No idea how long I might need. Don't play unless I have 2 + 3 hours. Like, I'm not playing a single player game unless I can sit down and block off a chunk of time. The last one I played was Little Hope, and I sat down and played 6 straight hours to finish the game. And if it's not a game like that, that last reason really does resonate with me. Forgot what I was doing in this game last time. Hard to get back in. I've seen games that like kind of use the previously. They act kind of like a TV show, give you a recap. Like, more of that would be helpful, I think. Because when I can't find the time to play the game, it takes me a while to come back around to it. It's frustrating to be like, what was I doing? Where did I leave off? Yeah,
I think more game, like, that's a big one for me too. And it's not just what was I doing in this story, but rather like, how do I play this game? Like, what are the controls? And I think it would be cool, like, they already have the data to know when was the last time I turned this game on, and if it's been more than like 2 weeks, show me a short little recap of like some of the cutscenes that I just got to see, and then make me play like a 2-minute control refresher just to remember what the hell it is that, like, how to play the game, you know? And The Witcher was one of those games, like, The Witcher does a really great job of this, actually, because The Witcher had a lot of like, hey, you can watch this little recap cutscene to see where you were when you left off.
They do it every time you load in.
Yeah, so
for the main story, yeah.
So that did a really great job of that. Like, The Witcher was one of those games I ended up beating after 3 years of playing it. Like, because I just kept coming back to it when I'd get that itch. And but that third reason about engaging socially without the risk of spoilers kind of has like the adverse effect on me, right? Like, that pressure of needing to finish a game gets to me to the point where like I don't really enjoy the experience at all. And like I just kind of get frustrated by it. Like, I want to sit back. I still haven't beat The Last of Us Part 2 because of reasons with my living situation and my wife wanting to watch it all with me. But like, that pressure of like, I need to play this all before some shit gets spoiled, which I think I've got the biggest spoiler of that game behind me at this point. But like, that pressure just kind of turns me off from wanting to play it. Because I'm having to play it so quickly that I'm not really like digesting it and really getting it. So I definitely relate to all of these. I think that it's super interesting that like I have a tendency to think I'm unique in all of my problems, and when I see it put on paper that everybody else is experiencing those as well. But I'm the same way with time. Like, if I don't have a couple hours to sit down and like, if I start a mainline quest in Assassin's Creed, I want to be able to finish it in that sitting, and not knowing if I can do that in a game is kind of disincentivizes it, like demotivates me to want to hop in. So I think it's interesting to see how Sony has taken these findings with, the context of what you just told us about activities, Cody, and like folded that into their platform of like, how do we? So let's get a little inside baseball here. So we used to run a little site called Two Left Sticks, and I'm actually kind of sad at how it fizzled out because I think we were building something pretty cool there. But we got together collectively at one point and we're like, how do we have discussions about video games in a different way from like IGN, GameSpot? All these people will never be able to compete with. And one of the things, like one of our sticking points for it was nobody plays games the way that guys at IGN play games or guys at GameSpot play games. Like nobody is getting these games ahead of launch, having, hours on end to block off in order to beat them, in order to write a review. Like I'm playing The Witcher for 3 fucking years in a row. Like, and I think we kind of collectively thought it would be interesting to create an outlet of like, how do we talk about games in this kind of like slower paced, I'm an adult with other shit to do kind of way. That wasn't like talking down to people who had the time, but was just like understanding of the situation that we can be hardcore gamers who just don't have the time to actually like manifest our hardcore gaming desires, right? And I just think it's interesting that like these things that we were feeling a couple years ago as adults who started to have more responsibilities and less time to do these things, we're feeling these pain points that then Sony turns around and is like, we're going to craft entire features of our next gen console to alleviate that. And so that was really, really cool to me. Like we see these pain points and we're not going to tell people to just like suck it up. We understand that it's worth investing time and energy into doing it, because that's the reason I'll default to Overwatch. I can have 15 minutes of spare time, play like a quick game of like quick play Overwatch, and then turn it off and be fine. I can't do that with single player games.
This isn't single player, but it's more in the narrative line. I think it would have been a lot easier for me to be involved in Destiny with something like this. All right, I can hop in with an activity. I've got 15 minutes blocked off. What kind of side quest can I knock off for the day? Boom. But every time I loaded into Destiny, I had to figure out what I was doing, go sell some stuff, fly to where I needed to be. So this kind of thing, I see a broad range of application for it. I think it's really cool. And on Sony's end, right? It's not noble. They don't want to serve me as the gamer. They want to get their hooks in me, and these problems have been a barrier to that. It keeps me out of the feedback loop that keeps me gaming as much as I could. They want to suck me in and take all my free time, but that's okay because I want it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think your point though with Destiny is like real interesting though, Larry, because like these features are clearly built with single player stuff in mind, but these games and services are going to figure out ways to leverage this in such a way, because how many people are like defaulting to a single player game that they can knock out in 20 hours because they don't have the time to invest, days and days on end to like ready up for a Destiny raid. But if I can like, so the Destiny loop is this right now, right? Like, and I haven't played Destiny in a while, so I may be wrong, but like you load the game, you have to pick the planet you want to go to, you have to pick the mission that you're going to do, or you've got to go to the tower, you've got to collect your bounties and your missions and your whatnots to do there, go back to the hub world, load back into the map that you want to go to, finish that mission, bounce back out, go to the next one. And it's like you're spending half of the time that you had to play that game inside of hub worlds and inside of the tower to collect your shit. But if I can just go to my activities menu and it just throw me right into the middle of like, not the raid, what's the other kind of thing that you have to do in Destiny?
Strikes.
Yeah, like throw me right into the middle of a strike without having to do all that stuff. That would be awesome. I would dedicate more time to playing Destiny if half my time wasn't spent in menus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems, I think they were pretty explicit about this in one of those internal documents. I want to get this right. So Klepek writes, all of this, according to Sony, creates friction well, their proposed system, meaning the activities, which they've apparently dubbed the universal data system, can help solve.
Of course they did.
Of course. Like the whole idea is to, and we talked actually about this in a more critical light in terms of how Ubisoft crafts experiences, like making any barrier to enjoyment, any barrier to like the bare level of enjoyment, like getting rid of that entirely and creating a frictionless experience. When the direction, I guess, the conversation for me, the most interesting direction of this conversation lies in like what happens when you get rid of that friction. Because for me, friction isn't necessarily a bad thing, at least in terms of the design and like actual playing of games. Friction for me can actually result in some of the most interesting aspects of games. Like Dark Souls is entirely friction. And I guess, and Klepek alludes to this in his article. Like there was a backlash to an article he wrote before about like what activities are and how they can be good for gamers. And the backlash was like, what you've basically done is with activities turn a game, which is a single player game, which is ostensibly kind of an immersive experience, into a checklist. Mm-hmm. Which you could argue Ubisoft games already are. But I think there's an element of that I understand, but like this isn't for the people who are playing games as like immersive simulations and want to like walk or like ride to everything. This is for people who need to think about their time more carefully, and I think for them it's a super helpful activity, a super helpful functional activity. I think like having activities doesn't remove that for you as a player. Like it's not a requirement as a feature, which I think is the most important thing to iterate here. Like they've made a data-driven decision that doesn't force you into one way of playing games, which is good for everybody involved. It opens it up potentially for more people to be able to enjoy these games.
Right.
I love the example that he gives when he talks about the type of player that doesn't have the time or doesn't want to be immersed like that. He talks about his friend who plays Assassin's Creed games by knocking out every lit up side quest first and then attacking the main line. And the reason I like that example is because that's me when I have time to play a single player game. I beat every quest, but like there were like 13 quests left on my checklist in Oblivion when Skyrim came out. I almost got it all. And that's what I want. I want to be able to just jump straight in. What was I doing? Let's tackle this. All right, we're done. Moving on.
Yeah, for like the completionist or like someone who's trying to platinum a game, that at that point is just thinking about a game purely in terms of like, what's the fastest way for me to complete this and get from point A to point B? It's great. Like I talked about last time, sometimes using the activities is a faster way to get into the game than actually loading the game itself, which is awesome. Like especially for Spider-Man, which is an easy platinum, you can just hop to like an individual collectible and get that, which is great. It speeds up the process. Although swinging around as Spider-Man is just as immersive and great as well.
Yeah, there's a big difference between friction in gameplay and friction in systems, and I don't think
100%.
I don't think Sony's necessarily trying to like solve for friction in gameplay. Like friction in gameplay is the reason you have gameplay. That's the big discussion we were having about like difficulty levels in Dark Souls games and stuff like that, you know, a year. But when you're just like removing system friction, like that's always a good thing. Like in marketing, we talk constantly about like removing friction in the buyer funnel. How can you more easily get people to take the actions that you want them to take? And it's appreciated from both the company standpoint because we get better results on whatever marketing campaign, but it's also like appreciated from the UI standpoint for the user who's just like, oh man, it's so nice not having to click into a form and then have to click this button and go to this page and do this thing. Like, and it's the same thing here. And you have people investing more time in your ecosystem if you're doing that kind of if you're removing those kinds of barriers. And so I love this, and like you said, Cody, it's not a referendum on either play style. Like if you're one of those guys who loves sitting and, you know, traveling the world and you never use fast travel and you never do that shit. Like essentially this seems to me like it's super effective fast travel in a game.
Yes.
You know, like, and I'm one of those guys, like, the thing I hate the most about Assassin's Creed, and I'm sure people love it, is like, I hate getting on my boat and having to sail to my next objective and have to hear the same song or ask my guys to tell a story. And like, that's just boring to me. I'm not one of those guys who's like looking around at everything and like, oh man, look at this world. It's so awesome. Like, just get me to the next thing. I want to play that thing. I did want to show one other thing from the gift that he has in this story, is the estimated playtime that's shown as well in the UI when you pull up one of these activities. So in Miles Morales, this is the Lost Cat, and it's showing you it's going to take about 5 minutes to complete, and it's 100 XP reward. Like, and it tells you what you get out of that thing as well. Oh my gosh, that would be so awesome. Like, I keep going back to Assassin's Creed because it's what I'm playing right now, but like, I'm at a point right now where I'm building my settlement. The objective I have is like, I have to build this woman her house. I need X amount of materials. I just sailed 3,500 meters away to a raid that I thought would give me the supplies that I needed, and I'm still 100 materials short. If I could have just pulled up my activity list and shown what rewards I get for completing this thing to select it, that's fucking awesome to me. I love that. And you know what? If you don't want it, you don't have to press the home button.
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question too, because I haven't used the activity functionality for third-party games. So I don't know how they incentivize people to kind of implement this stuff well. Like, especially for a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Cyberpunk, where like the sheer amount of activities in those games is overwhelming to think about. It begs the question, like, how you implement it, how easily it can be implemented. But like, especially for Cyberpunk, one of the complaints I heard about in the preview coverage was that in your quest feed, it doesn't tell you what you get from a quest in terms of experience or items. If you can get around that by having it in the activities feed, that would be amazing. I don't plan on playing it on PlayStation, but that would incentivize me to get it for PlayStation. This is one of those features that has that potential for, like, if I have both consoles and I'm trying to decide what console to play a game on, am I more likely to play it on PlayStation because of this feature? Potentially, depending on the game, yeah. Like for Spider-Man, it's made my life so much easier.
Yeah. Anything else you guys found interesting in this story that you wanted to chat about before we move on?
Nope.
Going once.
No.
It's cool to see, like, and we've talked about this a lot, like, how do you iterate, how do you improve, and like, next gen consoles always kind of surprise me, and this one feels like a more, like, I think the prime example of this done poorly was like Xbox's whole like one box for your living room, like you connect your cable set top box to it, and like it's all entertainment all rolled in one, and it was like, nobody's asking for this shit. Like, why are you doing this?
But I was alone.
Yeah, Larry. Nobody outside of Larry. They were just monitoring Larry's Xbox 360 data, and they were like, "This is the target customer right here."
I was like, I can change my direct TV channel while eating a chicken wing with motion controls. Yes.
And then you realize you're paying.
That way.
Then you realize you're paying $250 a month for direct TV, and you're getting absolutely ripped off.
True, but it took me 2 years of Xbox era to get to that point.
You're like, this is so worth it.
I feel like Tom Cruise in Minority Report.
Which I think was like the example they used when pitching the idea.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Also.
Probably.
But this seems more like we're recognizing where our customer is at, where our consumer is at, and what they need from the experience to like make it better for themselves. And so I'm interested to see, again, like how these first party things are leveraged by third parties that are coming in. I'd love to see how Assassin's Creed, and once I get my PS5, I'll let you guys know how that happens. So all right, guys, well, let's move on then to our next segment, the Slant, which is where we take some of the interesting pieces of gaming news from the week and give our takes on them. Cody, kicking it over to you for our first story.
Yeah, so this is a story that came out this week. Actually, it came out yesterday. And I'll just read straight from it because Nicole Carpenter over at Polygon can do a much better job than I can. Ryan Hernandez, the 21-year-old California man who hacked into Nintendo's internal network and leaked information about the Nintendo Switch before its launch, has been sentenced to 3 years in prison. Hernandez pleaded guilty in January to federal charges related to the hacking incident and possession of child pornography. So this is I figured I'd bring this up mostly because I don't think we're going to have very different takes on this. I think both activities are reprehensible, probably to very different degrees. But I think it's worth talking about just because we've talked in the past about. I'm thinking about how to charitably put this, but Nintendo's vigorous response to people who kind of go against their wishes. And obviously, Hernandez, his crimes expand beyond just his hack, as Carpenter mentioned. But this is, I mean, 3 years. 3 years is not an insignificant amount of time, and it's also, I think, later in the story she mentions kind of the conditions related to that as well. In that after he's released from prison, he'll be required to complete 7 years of supervised release, and also, of course, register as a sex offender. This is an interesting case. We don't often see games related cases kind of cross over with FBI investigations, which this one did. What are your top level thoughts of kind of this case involving Hernandez?
So the whole like play out of this thing is kind of interesting, right? So
Yeah.
So he executes like this phishing scheme, which he's not a hacker if he's doing like a phishing scheme. That's not what a hacker is. He's emailing to try to get passwords from Nintendo employees, which you wouldn't believe, you guys, how many phishing emails we get at Modus. And like how often our IT has to give us a heads up about phishing attacks that are incoming. Because like people just want industry secrets, which is fucking crazy that they go to those links. But so he gains access to Nintendo's secret through this phishing thing. FBI investigators hunt him down and essentially like have a handshake agreement because he's a minor where he says like, okay, I'll stop. This was scary. The FBI caught me. Well, he didn't stop. He keeps getting into Nintendo servers. And then the FBI comes and searches his home in 2019 and they found all the Nintendo files he had stolen. And then they find the child pornography in a file labeled bad stuff. And so the whole play out of this is just is wild to me. Like I have to think there's more than just like this guy wanting to hack, like to get into Nintendo secrets. Like there's probably not a lot going on for him in life if like these are the two things he's spending his time doing: child pornography and, you know, trying to hack into these accounts. I mean, look, Nintendo has been quite, like you said, enthusiastic about pursuing people that are doing these things. I can take it or leave it with that kind of stuff, but if it leads to them discovering someone who's in possession of this kind of stuff, like, okay, I guess the end kind of justifies the means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's no way they would have known that kind of had they not
investigated. It doesn't seem like it from
place.
this story, yeah.
Yeah. I don't have much to add except this is terrible. Yeah. Glad he got caught. And if you ask me, 3 years is not enough, but
probably not. No.
Yeah.
It seems like this is probably a story that'll be evolving over time as these cases tend to do. And I just I have no sympathy for people who do the kinds of who behave and do and have the kind of inclinations that this kind of person does. So I'll just leave my thoughts there.
All right. Well, let's move on then to our next story. Cody, this one is you as well.
Yes. This is more of, I guess I saw this more as a public service than anything else, but CD Projekt Red kind of outlined how cross saves will work in a more comprehensive way recently. And sidebar, pardon me if I feel like I was unaware until I read this story that like an individual, maybe I just this kind of left my mind, but the fact that Cyberpunk 2077 won't have like a official PS5 or Xbox Series X version at launch didn't, I guess that didn't register with me. But it is the case, so you'll basically be playing the same version on PS4 and Xbox One as you will on the next gen consoles. But CD Projekt Red outlined how you will be able to kind of migrate those saves if or when you decide to upgrade to the next generation. For as has been typical with this stuff, the situation for PlayStation is a little bit more complicated than it is for Xbox. For the upgrade from PS4 to PS5, they offer kind of 3 options. You can upload your saved game to the cloud, which is probably the easiest option if you have a great internet connection. You can transfer your data over a local area network, either wired or wireless, or you can make the move using an external hard drive or other external storage device. And then for Xbox, they've made it pretty easy. They have the whole smart delivery feature, which is basically cloud-based, allows you to basically plug in your Xbox Series X or S, log into your profile, and just immediately pick up back from where you had left off while playing on Xbox One through the cloud. The only other that I brought this up only because we had talked recently about how the reason behind the most recent delay was the current gen versions of these games.
Mm-hmm.
And them outlining this more comprehensively recently is probably both a obviously educational move for their audience, but also a strategic move because they realize that most people will be upgrading and hopefully will not experience the version that I'm sure will be a little rough at launch for PS4 and Xbox One. But it was informative for me, and I also brought it up just because they have implied that a enhanced version for PS5 and Series X will be coming down the line. They have not said when.
Yeah, almost makes me want to. I don't know. I want to be a part of this conversation with Cyberpunk, so I'll probably start playing next week. But I'll definitely want to jump back into it probably whatever they're going to do on next gen systems. Yeah. Well, and I think Assassin's Creed does something similar with their save, where it's actually saved via your Ubisoft account. And just
I had no idea about that.
I think I saw Greg Miller tweeting about this actually, where like he started it on PS4 and then picked it up on PS5, and it just like dropped him back in exactly where he was.
Oh, I've heard people talking about even switching consoles, so they go from PS4 or PS5 to Xbox Series X, and their save carries over, which is the future, isn't it? That's awesome.
That would be that's pretty dope. The more like if me having to have a Ubisoft account is going to unlock a feature like that, then it's worth it. But when I just have to sign up for an EA account when I play Madden so that they can just send data back to their servers, like that's where I start to get a little pissed about it.
Yeah. And I even did, like, over the Thanksgiving break, I had brought both of my consoles up to Massachusetts with me to play with my brother. I have fizzled out there again, but I was playing Warzone with him. I have Warzone on my Series X. I didn't have a mic for my Xbox controller. There's a mic built into the PlayStation controller, so I downloaded Warzone on my PS5, logged into my Activision account, and everything was there. So like that, the more stuff like that, which is obviously increasingly happening, is fantastic. Also, just for Cyberpunk specifically, CD Projekt Red notes that like the next gen, playing it on next gen will be somewhat enhanced, but not like enhanced. It'll obviously take advantage of probably the load times and stuff like that. But I'm going to be playing it on next gen. I don't anticipate it being significantly different, which is sort of a bummer, but also for them, probably a necessity more than anything else to just get this game out.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of games that you know, probably had other things that were necessary for them to do in order for them to be successful, let's talk about Marvel Avengers from Square Enix. This is from Joe Screbbles over at IGN. It says Marvel Avengers sales have been lower than expected, and the game hasn't yet recouped its development costs, leading to an estimated $67 million operating loss in Square Enix's HD games segment during the last financial quarter. Company president, and I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this, Yosuke Matsude, explained in a newly translated results briefing, quote, sales of Marvel's Avengers were lower than we had expected and unable to completely offset the amortization of the game's development cost, end quote. Game analyst David Gibson previously explained that the company sold 60% of its planned units and that the numbers implied the game cost around $100 million to make. Larry and I actually had an offline discussion about this game, I think last week, and I will say I have not personally played Marvel Avengers. Have you, Cody?
I played the beta.
Okay. And then Larry, have you played it at all?
No.
Okay. So 3 guys, 2 of which I think are, well, you guys are both like pretty into the MCU, right? So
Like the movies, yeah.
Yeah. And none of us have like seriously played this game. You played the beta, and that's the most experience that we had with it. I think when this game was revealed, our thoughts were all the same, right? Like, and I'm talking about when Square Enix announced that they had the Avengers franchise and were working on the title. Conventional wisdom again would say, well, that's a slam fucking dunk. The most successful movie franchise in cinema history, getting a fully licensed, outside of Spider-Man, version video game, like, that's gonna be awesome. And then I think as we got closer and closer to release, I just feel like the steam kind of, like the wind kind of came out of the sails, and everyone kind of stopped talking about it. I think after their reveal at E3, where was that E3 where everybody was kind of talking about like the character models and all that. I feel like there was kind of a cloud and a weird conversation that, whether merited or not, around like who these characters were and what they looked like. And I think from that point on, like the discussion about this game just kind of fizzled off. Am I reading the situation right, or did you guys perceive that differently?
Yeah, I think the loss of steam was definitely a thing. For me, an additional component to that was gameplay wise, this was so similar to Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Graphically very different, but gameplay wise so similar. And to have both those games come out in the same year was just a weird decision. And I know different companies were making the game, but ultimately at some point the same person is signing off on both of these games existing, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, it was, I feel like the same game came out twice in 1 year, and I just didn't feel like buying it a second time.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the conversation around that game was like was most intense for probably about the week-long period where it came out, and probably before that. I know they had a lot of preview coverage prior to that. I mean, in terms of the failure of the game to stick is probably due to a lot of factors. We didn't play the final version, but from my sense of the conversation, complaints were mostly around the fact that it tried to split the difference between well-told single-player story and multiplayer brawler, kind of a lack of a steady roadmap for content, overly repetitive gameplay loop that wasn't rewarding in terms of gear. Like all the stuff that tends to kind of sink a game like this, which was meant to be kind of their destiny, their capital D destiny, not underscore destiny. But yeah, I definitely feel like that. Like even when they revealed kind of Hawkeye, and then came out with a trailer recently, I didn't really see much about it, much conversation about it. And you'd think there would be for like a game that's taking advantage of a IP as high profile as the Avengers.
Yeah. The funny thing is though, like a lot of the stuff that you just listed off, Cody, as issues are like issues that you don't see until you actually get your hands on the game.
Yeah.
And I feel like the big point for me was like I never really quite understood what this game was supposed to be. Like, and you did mention like the straddling the line between like a well-told single-player story and then like a multiplayer brawler, but like
Yeah, they're competing visions.
like I couldn't give you the elevator pitch for what this game was outside of just like it has all these characters that are really familiar to us and that have been super popular. And I feel like just from what you described, it sounds a lot like Anthem in terms of like not a very clear roadmap. The gameplay loop's kind of repetitive. There's certain things about the game that are fun, but it's not like enough to carry that experience over and over again. Like I felt like their preview coverage also was like really crowded around launch, which is always a really weird decision. Like when you've got, I feel like there were previews for the game, like influencer previews, like 2 weeks before launch. And like, and then there was like another embargo before the pre-release embargo where users could talk about the full game. And then like, wasn't the beta really close to launch too? Like 6 weeks or something?
The beta
like that?
was in August.
And the game launched.
So yeah, pretty close. I think it launched in September.
And that's always weird to me. Like, I feel like Destiny 1's beta was perfect.
Yeah.
It was great timing. It was just a slice of the world. I think you maxed out at level 5 or 6 or something like that. So like you were just getting strong enough, like, and it kind of left that taste in your mouth, like after to crave that thing when it came out. I felt like I saw a lot of people who played in the Marvel Avengers beta and were just kind of like, got my fill of that. Like, because that's what these games are, right? Like you want to hop in, you want to be the hero for a bit, and that's really all you're after. Unless you're like, and then it was competing against, like you said, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and then another really well-told single-player game in this universe, which is the Spider-Man game, bookended by the original Spider-Man and then advertising for Miles Morales that had started up at the point. Like, I just feel like it was kind of lost in this weird muck of people not really understanding what it was supposed to be, and really at the end of the day, Square Enix not really understanding what they were making either.
Yeah, lost is, I feel like, the perfect word. And I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in terms of their development and design discussions around this game. Because even the people who played it and were like kind of down on it, I felt like the most universal praise for the game was that for the hours where it was a single player story-driven Marvel game, it was actually a pretty good one. Like, didn't the actress who plays Miss Marvel won the Golden Joystick for best performance? So, like, and Troy Baker, Nolan North, Laura Bailey, like the voice cast is stacked. The writing, it sounds like, was pretty good and spot on for the Marvel universe. I would have loved to hear at what point the conversation around what this game is or became actually happened. Like, what was the original vision for the game? When was it always this split vision? Did that come into it later? And I'm sure we'll probably hear that story I hope we hear that story at some point, because I'm interested in reading it. Like this, as you said, like this is an Avengers, a large budget Avengers game is as much of a slam dunk as there ever is in games. And for it to fizzle out, like you said, as it has, and for them to have just like missed the mark in terms of messaging, in terms of actual execution, is just it's inconceivable. Like, if you have to spend 2 to 3 developer diaries explaining the core concept of how your game works, I think you're in trouble. And that's the position they were in prior to launch.
Yeah. Well, okay, let me give you my wild speculation on what the conversation was.
Do it. Put the hat on. Put the speculation hat on.
Strap that on right there. Hold on, gotta buckle it so it doesn't fall off. So I feel like when this game was revealed, it was revealed with like really kind of a story-driven trailer. It was we got to see like a really big cutscene, like within the game that brought where all the characters were coming together. Like, I felt like it was being marketed as a very story driven game. What I think is that development and probably cost of the license just got so absolutely bloated that they were like, we have to figure out a way to give this thing legs post launch. And so let's start to fold in more of this like games as servicey stuff. Because if you would have asked me to explain what it was after that reveal trailer, I would have said, oh, that's just going to be like a single player, maybe like some open world elements, but it's going to track along with like the Spider-Man model, right? But then when all the multiplayer stuff started getting talked about, I was like, where the hell did this stuff come from? So that's my speculation on it, was like the multiplayer stuff was brought in to just alleviate some of the budget bloat that was going on. But probably, in all honesty, just created more.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on Marvel Avengers?
I wanted this game to be good.
Do you think there's, well, you've only played the beta, but do you think there's a foundation? Like, you know, everybody talks about Anthem, which I'm still like, they're still working on that quietly, like whatever the update's going to be. Interested. But like, there was that thing of people coming back and being like, Anthem's flying mechanic is so fucking good that if they can like even create a mediocre game around it, it'll be fine. But that game was just so bad outside of that mechanic. Is there anything with Marvel outside of just the franchise and the characters that it's like, man, that's something like they're doing this really unique?
The combat is pretty fun. The interactions between the characters is pretty fun in terms of gameplay. The biggest thing they have going for them is the roster of characters they can bring into this thing. And so if you bought it at launch and are maybe disappointed, it sounds like the individual characters bring in like a pretty sizable kind of story component with them. Like Kate Bishop, the daughter of Hawkeye, who they're bringing in as a playable character. It sounds like her quest line is pretty involved. And if they just want to do that and like pivot away from the multiplayer stuff, I doubt they will. This is obviously all links back into it, but if like that is enough, would be enough for me as a player to bring me back in. Like if you can bring in like Kate Bishop for like a little one-off kind of story-driven component, bring Hawkeye in. It sounds like Ant-Man and like Black Panther will be brought in at some point. If those are just like, if you think about it in terms of comics, if those are like individual issues in this larger story that they're telling, that's awesome to me. And you can then play with those characters in the raids and stuff too. That's great. But like the greatest thing they have going for them is apparently the quality of story that they're telling, which is not is harder obviously than is harder than I think a lot of developers have thought it would be in this kind of games as service landscape. Destiny struggled with it for so long. Anthem struggled to kind of get that level of quality. It sounds like they actually have that level of quality. And so if they can go off and run in with that, I think they could bring people. I don't know if it'll make up for probably the massive deficit they're facing on this game, but it'll at least keep people engaged.
All right. Well, let's move on. Next story on the list, Cody.
Yeah. Talking about games as service. None of us play Fortnite, but Larry and I watched The Mandalorian, so I figured I would bring this up.
I watched The Mandalorian too. Where did this concept come that I don't watch The Mandalorian?
Talk about it. You never talk about it.
Sorry.
You're just a Grogu hater.
Oh, God. No one knows who that is.
No. But Fortnite Season 5 is launching, which is nuts. Sorry, Chapter 2 Season 5.
Yeah.
And so this comes courtesy of Riley McLeod over at Kotaku. There's some interesting things being introduced in Season 5, so I'll let Riley take it from here. Quote, the 0 point is now a major focus of the island's landscape, according to the in-game cinematics that went live on YouTube at midnight. The 0 point's world-shattering properties have brought new biomes like a desert, an ancient coliseum, and a jungle. It sucked in some new characters as well, as Epic describes. Season 5 revolves around helping Jonesy, who I don't know who that is, fight characters from other realities who are trying to escape the loop, a bit of sci-fi lore that's weaved in and out of several of Fortnite's big events. As with Season 4's Marvel theme, this opens the door to crossovers. In Season 5, The Mandalorian makes an appearance along with some new Fortnite characters called Hunters, unquote. And so The Mandalorian brings with him the child, I'm not sure, or Baby Yoda. I'm not sure how much Baby Yoda will be along for the ride in terms of this, or if that's just a cinematic flair. But I brought this up mostly because we've talked. I love what, as much as I don't actually enjoy the game itself. I love what Epic does with marketing and kind of expanding the scope of this weird world they've crafted. There's a big kind of Galactus Marvel event that just happened with the launch of the season. They do a lot of great strategic partnerships and brand kind of partnerships and crossovers, to the point where I've seen people make this point on Twitter, and it's a point I agree with. I don't even feel like Fortnite is a game anymore so much as it is like basically a bunch of action figures.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think Austin Walker described it as Fortnite is not a game, it's plastic. And I feel like this kind of reiterates that to probably a greater degree.
Fortnite does something so interesting with their marketing because they create the feeling of exclusivity without scarcity. And I don't understand it. Like, I don't get how they've made something out of nothing in a lot of ways. Like, I was talking to my brother on the phone earlier this week, and my nephew was in the background, and I'm convinced my nephew thinks that I work for the company that makes Fortnite, which I don't, because he always asks me all these questions. But he was so excited. Now, look, I'm going to sound like a fucking boomer during this because I don't know what he was talking about. But my nephew's 10, and he absolutely loves Fortnite. Like, if he could take a pill to stop sleeping and just use all that time to play Fortnite, he would do it in a heartbeat. I guess they revealed like some of this in game during an in-game event, and my nephew was just talking about it as if he was like fucking going to E3 or something. Like, all he was doing was logging on to Fortnite, going to a section of the map and like seeing some in-game event, or like, I don't know, maybe this was just like the pre-roll cinematic that rolls before you get into the menu after an update. He was just so excited about this event, and it's like literally millions of people are about to watch this thing. You're not like, I mean, it was like he had secured a 1 in 100 pair of Jordans or something. And it's like, how does Fortnite do this shit? Like, these skins and stuff that like, they are so good at leveraging FOMO.
Yeah.
And it's insane to me. And they're killing it. It works.
Yeah, they've been doing it with that concert series that they had over the summer, which is incredible.
They're just putting a YouTube video in the sky, guys. Like, this not like, you can go to YouTube and watch Anderson .Paak whatever.
But it's incredible the amount of kind of energy they're able to generate still. Like season 5, chapter 2, they're still generating that level of engagement and excitement. And like the Mandalorian is not a small get. Like, Marvel wasn't a small get either. Obviously, it's part of the same Disney family, but like, The Mandalorian is arguably the biggest show on television, streaming, whatever you want to fucking call it now. And to get his helmeted face into Fortnite is a big deal. It's a recognizable piece of IP. And that, I have to imagine that sort of stuff, if it doesn't make people play it, at least it makes them engage with Fortnite online in a way that they wouldn't be. Like, all I saw on my YouTube feed was Mandalorian, and then I saw the like Fortnite logo, and I'm like, I clicked on it, and I'm like, okay, I'll watch this. And so I did, and they got me. Epic got me to watch their little trailer on YouTube, so they have another view because of me.
Yeah, the things they've incorporated in the culture they've built are a huge part of their success. I think if you remove all that, I mean, get your pitchforks ready. I do not think that this game on its own has the legs to be as massively popular as it is. I don't think it's a bad game. I don't enjoy it, but I think it's a good game. It's a well-designed game. It's a very original game. But you just have like normal skins, just just modifying the baseline characters like Apex does or PUBG does, I don't think it's nearly as popular as it is right now.
Yeah, and it's because they've designed it as not like Apex is a world, and they are bound by that world.
Mhm.
Epic has decided to forego any rules for how this world works, and by virtue of that, they're able to do crossovers like this. And again, like I said, like they're basically designing it and marketing it and viewing it as a platform. Like, what was that? Disney Infinity?
Yeah.
Like that kind of plug and play toy thing. That's how I view Fortnite now. Like these are just action figures you're able to kind of plug and play your game with, and it works really well for them. It's sort of genius in a lot of ways.
That's the actual storyline of Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
The hand is playing with the toys, but I guess the toys get sentient and want to break free. I don't know.
Gets deep.
Yeah, nothing.
Am I the toy?
Nothing sacred in the Fortnite universe, which is interesting as well. Like they're willing to totally revamp their map. They're willing to burn it all down and rebuild it, and people just come back to it. It's wild. Another wild possible addition. Now this is just a rumor, and this comes from GameSpot, reported on by Aaron Garst. Kratos may be coming to Fortnite according to a leak, and this is from popular Fortnite leaker HypeX. I wouldn't normally talk about leaks, but this is coming from GameSpot, so I guess this guy's gotten some stuff right in the past. Kratos might be coming to Fortnite, and can I make this image bigger so that people can see it? So Sony has now a minority stake in Epic Games, and so I think we may have even talked about possible crossovers in the past. Money would not have been on Kratos as being the first character to make the leap. Maybe God of War 3 Kratos, but not God of War revamped Kratos. But
Dad Kratos.
Yeah, Daddy Toast here. Nonetheless, here he is, maybe possibly coming to the game. And this character model is pretty fucking cool.
It makes a lot of sense.
But
who would you have had your money on as making it as a crossover character from Sony's roster?
I mean,
I'm trying to think.
I mean, I guess it makes sense for it to be somebody like Kratos. Like, I don't think you can do anything from The Last of Us that would make a lot of sense. But I would have thought maybe something like Ratchet and Clank.
Or Aloy. Aloy has been a crossover character before for other things.
Yeah.
Rafi Malek's character from Until Dawn.
Just Rami Malek himself.
Ravi, my bad.
I thought you said Rami. What did you say?
I'm messing everything up tonight. I said it.
Say Robbie?
Yeah, no.
Did you say Ralphie?
I said Ravi.
Oh, Ravi.
Robbie, okay.
Yeah, Aloy would make sense too, or any of those robot dinosaurs. That'd be just like a cool section of the Fortnite map. It was like a Horizon Zero Dawn section where you land on top of one of those flat-headed long necks.
Was it's not Sony, but was Geralt ever in Fortnite?
No, I think he was in like Soul Calibur.
He was in Soul Calibur.
But I don't think he's made a Fortnite.
And he was in Monster Hunter.
Yeah, he was. And so was Aloy was in. Well, Aloy's armor was in Monster Hunter, right? So
Geralt gets around.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop up in Cyberpunk. I'm not joking. There's a if you go back and play Witcher, there's a sort of little tease crossover there.
That'd be cool. I hope Boy makes it into Fortnite as well. I can't remember his actual name. It starts with an A. Atreus, yeah. Boy.
He's just Boy.
Boy. All right, let's move on to our final story of the night because we don't have any offbeat. Larry, kicking it over to you.
Yeah, so a bit of good news if you're a fan of Bungie. PC Gamer put out an article called Bungie Boss Says the Studio has been working on new games for 3 years by Jonathan Bolding. And the story is in the headline there. If you think that Bungie has been completely focused in on Destiny, you're wrong. They've been working on Destiny. Obviously, Destiny's had a lot of new content here recently, but they've also had teams. It was really interesting reading how they worked on it. They had what they were calling incubations, and they anticipated a high level of failure in the incubations. The main purpose of those was to create teams that could work together really well. But everything these teams have been working on has been impressive, apparently, because all 3 of these projects are moving. I think it was 3, but multiple projects are moving forward. We know the name of one. It's Matter, and there's an image that accompanied their trademark filing for Matter. Doesn't really tell us much, but yeah, I thought this was really interesting. This is really exciting because I love Bungie. I love everything Bungie's ever done. But for a long time, Bungie has been hyper focused on one franchise at a time, right? It was Halo for many years, and now it's been Destiny for many years. And I'm excited to see them being able to kind of juggle multiple things at once. I'm excited to see what they can do besides sprawling space odysseys, because I kind of like they talked about one of these games as being lighthearted and kind of whimsical, and I don't know. I'm just interested to see what they can do besides what we're used to Bungie doing.
Yeah, I think this is cool, and I think this is a big reason that Bungie wanted to move on from Activision and kind of do their own thing. Was they probably had ideas in the pipeline, and as we talked about a year ago, Activision was just like nixing all kinds of shit. Not that they had acquired Bungie fully, but they had acquired the publishing rights to Destiny. So I imagine they'd have taken a vested interest in anything else Bungie was wanting to dedicate resources to. So, no, I love that idea of just like, hey, we're gonna set some teams loose to just create some shit, and if it's bad, that's fine. Like, we expect that. But the fact that all 3 of them were so good, they're like, we're gonna greenlight these. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really empowering for your employees too. Like to not only feel like you have an outlet to express your ideas, but to have those ideas actually valued as much as they clearly are is a pretty great thing. I've been impressed by Bungie. I was impressed with Bungie, obviously, with Halo, but like Destiny 1 was like such a struggle for them. But they've really turned that franchise it is now and around. I feel like they've really from everything I hear, they've perfected like the mix of storytelling and gameplay in those games to the point where people are actually invested in the worlds way more than they were in like the grimoire cards of the first game.
You mean like just putting a bunch of shit that I've got to read on my phone is not in-game video game story?
Turns out it's not. I mean, who could have known?
Do you not have phones?
But to see them take like what was ostensibly a loss with the original Destiny and really turn it into a win over time, it remains a testament to their ability as a studio. And I'm sure their team members there who have kind of become exhausted by working on Destiny. It sounds like these projects are probably pretty invigorating for the people there. I don't know, and they didn't explain what the scope of these projects are. I doubt all 3 of them will be like Destiny team sized or Destiny budget levels. But that gives them a little bit more freedom to kind of do creative things, which is always something we're looking for from established studios.
Guys, I'm watching this gameplay loop on the PC Gamer article of Destiny and just getting like that twinge of nostalgic sadness from how fucking excited I was for the launch of Destiny 1 and how I stayed up all night with buddies of mine playing the game. So it's the last game I took time off work to play. And I'm just remembering how much I was invested in Destiny. So I'm all in for whatever Bungie's gonna do next with these titles.
I've been tempted to go back to Destiny since they've revamped it. They've apparently made the onboarding and like new player experience way easier, so I'm interested to go back and play.
Does it have crossplay now? Or is it still
Good question. I'll look that up.
Because if it has crossplay, I'd be totally down to jump back in to some
Definitely.
Destiny. Because still, to this day, no game beats the gunplay of Destiny.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I do want to correct something real fast. I said 3 projects, and I'm looking through this article. They never mentioned the number, so my bad. But we know that it's more than one. It's always plural.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
There is not crossplay currently, but they have plans for it.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Well, we'll see what Bungie's got cooking up. And I think that's going to do it for our show today, guys. We did it. We made up enough stories. None of these stories were true, by the way. We wrote them all ourselves. No, we were joking before the show. Like, this is such a lull in hard news time that, like, we just gotta kind of look for stuff that we find interesting, even if it's not, like, super important. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed our cobbled together slant section of the show. But we're going to wrap it up, get out of here. We're going to go around the circle. Who are you? Where can people find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week? Larry, let's start with you.
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at StillInFlux. Lot more Star Wars stuff happening on my Twitter feed. Less politics these days, although it's not gone completely, so enter at your own risk. And yeah, that's probably it. Star Wars and Rage.
And Rage. All right.
Breakfast of Champions.
And Spatial Jones in the chat says, "Great show, guys. Got to go. Take care. Thank you thank you."
Also, thank you for the follow, Spatial Jones. I think I remember you from Player 3 podcast days, so thanks for hopping back in with us now. All right, Codester, got for us.
Ooh, Codester is actually the nickname that I actually have in real life.
Oh, nice.
That's what my dad calls me that.
Oh,
so I just got a tinge of paternal warmth coming from you.
Can I borrow some money?
My name's Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. I will probably be going on a little bit of a Twitter hiatus just a self-imposed silence on Twitter and saving up all my energy for Cyberpunk Week next week. I literally have the 10th on my calendar on my phone labeled Cyberpunk Day. It's an all-day event. You're welcome to join. It'll be fantastic.
Are you going to just post a bunch of really zoomed in photos of your players' genitals?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm going to take all that time to sculpt it and then not be able to see it in game, so I might as well.
Yes. All right, my name is Luke. You can find me on Twitter at itishoagie. And I really don't know what I'm going to be tweeting about. Probably my continued... I had a tweet that I thought was going to get more traction the other day, where I edited Walmart's...
That's in real life.
Where I edited Walmart's PlayStation 5 listing and made it say, instead of out of stock, say, "Bitch, we ain't even going to let you get the chance." And it only got like 10 likes, so, but it was a good attempt by me. But yeah, I'm going to continue my search for a PlayStation 5 and continue to come up empty. And I'll just be tweeting about my frustration with that, or tweeting a very happy picture of my genitalia if I do secure one. So you're going to want to keep it locked into my Twitter feed, guys.
Hey, unfollow.
Did you say unfollow?
No.
You meant, how do I create another account to make sure I don't miss it? All right, guys. Well, we're going to get out of here. This has been PvA Radio. We appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, we love you.